That is the reason why suffering has a purpose in this world. Suffering is here, including even those forms of suffering that are entirely generated by the mind. That too is there to ultimately awaken you. So you have the suffering that is generated through this misuse of the mind, unconscious thinking, and you have suffering that comes through encountering disaster in one form or another in your life. That's not to be denied. And in the course of this weekend, we will explore how that also can become an opening into transcendence, and it often is. You will hear stories of people who were confronted with the most extreme forms of suffering and were able to go beyond it, not by denying it, but by transcending. There's a huge difference between denial and transcendence. We'll be looking at that. So there's the person who lives confronted with problems and with challenges, and there is the potential of discovering, and sometimes through encountering extreme forms of disaster, but not always, not necessarily, but there's the potential of discovering within yourself a dimension of depth that transcends who you are as a person. And in this moment, when the thinking mind stops for a moment and is replaced with an aware presence, then the transcendent dimension has emerged in you. And the invitation to you is right here and now to see if you can invite that dimension into your life. And it is almost as if you disappeared temporarily, what you before you called I. Because when you're not thinking and just are aware, then the person has temporarily subsided, and an aware presence has arisen, and that's the discovery of the transcendent you, or the, as I call it sometimes, the deep I. And for some people it comes, and there are many, many accounts throughout history, it comes through encountering extreme forms of suffering. I know that Steve Taylor will probably address it. He's done a lot of research, and we have one speaker, I don't want to say too much, who encountered awakening through very, very extreme form of suffering. And that is the potential for awakening that is hiding beyond the seemingly most dreadful thing that could happen to you. And it's all expressed symbolically, whether or not you relate to it whether you're a Christian or you're not a Christian, you simply understand there's something there, that the symbol of the cross points to. it doesn't. This is something I don't think it's fully understood by most churches or conventional Christians. What the symbol of the cross points to, and a man who is dying on the cross, to me that is the archetype of the human and what is possible. The cross is a torture instrument. It's an expression of extreme suffering. So you have this human being on a torture instrument. Now, then something happens. There is this human being dies, this in a state of surrender, not my will but thy will be done. The human being dies in a state of surrender, and the very torture instrument is a symbol for the divine. The cross is a sacred symbol. But the cross is also a torture instrument. The torture instrument, the greatest obstacle to fulfillment, the greatest obstacle to life, it seems, is also potentially the opening into the transcendent dimension. And I believe this, to me, is the deep symbolism of the cross. And traditionally, the humans, many humans who encountered an awakening, who encountered it through extreme suffering. And that drove them to a point of surrender. That drove them, because they couldn't stand the pain anymore, that drove them to the state of acceptance of what is. And then suddenly the vertical dimension opened up. That's also, you could say, the cross also points to the two dimensions, the horizontal dimension and the vertical dimension. So as awareness arises, or presence, then it begins to shine through the person. The person does no longer have the density that completely obscures the awareness, the consciousness, the unconditioned consciousness underneath. And it's often the case that the density is destroyed by suffering, and that is the reason why suffering has a purpose in this world. Suffering is here, including even those forms of suffering that are entirely generated by the mind. That too is there to ultimately awaken you. So you suffer, and the suffering, all of you have been through different forms of suffering, some very deep, some just a succession of many, many minor frustrations and things going wrong. So you somehow you lost confidence in, you lost belief that this world would ultimately be able to satisfy you or make you happy. You say, that's not it. And perhaps you became frustrated with yourself. That's possible too. So the suffering is a potential awakener. It has a purpose, and it is there to destroy you ultimately, or at least to create a crack in the egoic shell, and then something emerges through the crack. Some people in this lifetime continue to have an ego, but it's no longer totally, it's no longer a impenetrable shell. Through suffering, it has received cracks here and there. There's is it Leonard Cohen? I think he has a song or poem. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in, or gets out, I would say. So suffering destroys the false self, the identification, complete identification with your form identity.
But there were several questions, a number of them, which I'd like to kind of lump together and address. And that had to do with pain in the body. That being related to the pain body. And different parts of the body. Some people had shoulder problems, some people had it in their face, in their hips, and various other places in their body. And as I mentioned, every thought, every emotion, if not processed fully, leaves an imprint in the body. So if there have been any trauma in your life, any just emotions that come up and that you haven't processed, it leaves an imprint in the body. And usually those imprints of emotions have a story. And each time you tell the story, either it's out loud or in your head, okay, we know that one where it goes around. It actually, the energy, because it's every thought and every emotion is energy, the story goes around, and if you believe that story, you believe, the event may have happened to you, yes. But if you actually sort of feed on that and then you allow the story to play around in your head and you tell somebody else, you know what happened to me, or you have this victim role where you just feed on that event, the emotion. And that's what the pain body does. The first time I realized what Eckhart meant, because Eckhart would sometimes say, we will feed the pain body, or you connect with somebody else with a pain body and you feed off of each other. And I didn't really quite understand that. I kind of understood that intellectually. But there was one day where I was meditating and I was watching my pain body arise. So there was some old emotion there. Yes, I have a pain body and it will activate itself. And I was watching it because it was something very old. And something very old sometimes takes a long time to process. If it's been very traumatic, it will take a while in time to process. And then I had the story come up, the memory of the story. And I was able to witness that. And I saw that as soon as the story came up in my mind, it was like this energy ball that came down and fed right into my gut, where I was holding my pain body, where I could feel the pain. I was actually feeling the sensation of pain in my body. And I went, that's what Eckhart means by feeding the pain body. So if the story goes around in your head, keeps going around, and you play it out, it actually then makes this pain body bigger. So I went, okay, all right, now I understand. And then you're able then, that awareness is there that you can drop, you make that decision, and you don't follow the thought. but you stay connected to where you are feeling it internally, because that energy now is blocked in your body and it's something very old. And it has to be felt. You didn't feel it back then, so don't think you're going to get away with not feeling it now as it becomes active. So, and it's not you don't have to create it into a problem. It is not a problem. The mind thinks it's a problem, but it is not a problem. There is enough awareness in you where you are now able to free the pain body. Hallelujah. So when you feel it, hallelujah, really, truly, because your awareness is there and all you just have to do is just feel it. And sometimes it is so intense, and the reaction, the habit, is to be able to run away from it because we don't want to deal with it, we don't want to feel it. We go, oh, no, 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 not this, not this. Or when will this stop? As soon as you have those thoughts, you're not in acceptance mode. You're in resistance mode. So the only way out is through. Yes. Yeah, the only way out is through. And will that pain last forever? No. It feels like it will, but it won't. It won't. So we just feel that and allow that, your awareness, shining the light of consciousness on the energy itself within the body, and then it will dissolve or transmute, transform. It'll change. Maybe it'll start to dissipate, and the energy then can run freely. And then your energy body opens up, and the life force that is naturally and just always here, flowing within, can then flow. And there's a release. Sometimes it's a big release, sometimes it's a quiet release, but there's just a release. Now, it doesn't mean that it won't come up again, because it may come up again. Don't go into your head and think that, okay, well, I forget to feel this once and I want it gone. Usually it doesn't work that way. Life will bring something about to activate that dormant state of pain body so that we can release it and become free human beings. There was one here where somebody had hip replacements, 2 hip replacements, and with something like that, or changing something that's in the body, inviting a foreign object in the body, it takes time for the body then to be able to coexist with something that is foreign, and it will coexist. And there might even be a grieving process, because it's a loss of something. It's like losing a limb. So the body experience this, oh, geez, what's going on here? Something's different is happening. And there could be an experience of a loss, and a loss also on the emotional level. So pain can actually be our teacher and our alarm clock. Because when our body's in pain, it's saying, hey, pay attention here. Wake up, don't go away. Feel this, release this. So I invite you to bring that awareness, the acceptance, into your practice when the pain body arises. And then when you think the pain body is completely gone, as Ram Dass says, go home and to your parents for a week. Ultimate test. And not just like, there for a moment and pop out. Stay with them for a week. But life will show you, because we are evolving here, and that evolution calls for the release of all things old, so that we can stand new and fresh with this beautiful vessel that we have been given, so that life can bring forth a more conscious way of relating and living in this world.
I wonder if you can have any advice about ego longing for something. For example, an experience that was so wonderful that I wanted to be repeated.
It could even be a spiritual experience. It's not uncommon for people who have had, and then 10 years ago I had this great meditative experience. And ever since I've been trying to get back there, and
Yeah, something like that. For example.
is it, in your case, is it one particular thing especially, or is it something that happens frequently, the thinking back on wanting to experience? Or is it something that you want to mention, to tell us what it is, or would you prefer not to say what it is?
Yeah, of course I can be open. It's spending time together with a particular person. And it's wonderful. And I do realize that ego wants more, and it's never enough. And I do see it's kind of insane.
And that person is no longer in your life? Or
Yeah, he is in my life.
Oh, but why don't you spend time now with him?
Because I do realize that he's another human being, and he might want something else. And it feels not healthy to have this desire to be with that person all the time. I would like to have my freedom too.
So you are in a relationship with that person, but you're not living together.
Yes.
Right. And you want to spend more time.
Yes.
But he wants to have his freedom.
I guess.
Yeah. It's good sometimes to know a few details of the question, because that can be helpful. Details are very important. Sometimes I've had, before I answer your question, I don't know if there is an answer, we'll see. Sometimes people send me manuscripts of things they have written. Often it's called My Life. And often I read, and I read things like, when I was between the age of 6 and 10, I went through the most horrific experiences with my dad, who had issues with this and that, and I was totally... And it's all abstract, and the reader cannot even imagine what exactly did happen, except we are told it's horrific, and they say, I don't want to go into it here. Well, if you don't go into it, nobody's going to read it. People want to know concretely what actually happened. And anyway, that's it's helpful to know, because then we can truly relate to the question. It's the important thing is to become more comfortable with yourself and spending time with yourself. Now, in order to become more comfortable with that, you have to go more deeply into yourself, where what I sometimes call, I haven't used this term here so far, but recently have been using it occasionally, what I call the deep I, not this I, the first person singular I, the deep I as opposed to the surface I. The surface I is, of course, the egoic identity, the things that normally people refer to when they use the word I. They refer to me and my story and my needs and my desires and my anxieties and my ambitions. That's I, and I call that the surface I, that is identified with forms and feels certain needs, continuous needs, and the surface I lives in a state of frequent and in cases, or many cases, permanent state of unease at best. Unease, not completely satisfied, except briefly, just after a great meal with 2 glasses of wine. But of course you're moving towards unconsciousness. Or after having sex, perhaps, for a little while. No more desires. I mean, of course, the desire movement is just starting up again at the back, and an hour later, the unease comes back. Freud wrote this book. I read it 30 years ago, so I don't remember exactly what's in it, but I remember the title. The Unease in Culture. It's the English translation. He's saying there's an unease that underlies civilization. Now, I assume, if I don't remember the details, he says a civilization needs this unease, but I think he's wrong. The original word for unease, as used by Freud, for those of you who speak German, is das Unbehagen. Das Unbehagen, translated into English as unease. So there is an almost continuous sense of unease, and it says, what I need. Sometimes you don't even know what it is you need, but there's just a neediness, a free-floating neediness. And these are all symptoms of the surface I. And as long as you live on the surface I, then you can't get rid of these symptoms. They will remain. So the practice is exactly why you're here. This is the reason why you've come here. You've come here in order to go beyond, in order to transcend the surface I. It'll still be there, but it's no longer the foundation for your sense of identity. So you become still, and the mind subsides, and then you begin to, at first, just as little glimpses of presence, of yourself, as experiencing yourself as an underlying presence, consciousness. You become aware that you are conscious or consciousness. And at first it seems to be insignificant. Okay, and the mind says, and now what? And you just it does, yes, I knew that. So and now what do I do with that? Now, where does that take me? So you have to give yourself a little bit more space, because space is exactly what you want, and allow yourself to go more deeply in. And then the thoughts will keep coming in and say, think about something else. Think about what you need. This is what you need on a truer level, but it's not so much that you need it because you already have it, but you need to be conscious that you have it. That you need to be conscious of the deep I. It's already there. You don't need to bring it to you or to go do penance, or work hard for the next 25 years and then find it. No, it's already there. So you have to give yourself that space where you go within. What we're doing here, I mean, by coming here, you are doing it because you realize that the solution to your so-called problem lies here, which means it's all about you, lies in you. Become still. Find that dimension of stillness in you where you're fully alert but not thinking. 5 seconds. And then a little longer. Go into nature. Allow nature to help you. Look at a tree. Allow the tree to teach you stillness. Look at a tree for 2 minutes. And you will notice the tree exists surrounded by stillness. And it's very still. And so that you tune into that. So you go into you look at the sky, the spaciousness. I take photos of the sky all the time. I think they showed some here before. It had to be cropped a bit, unfortunately, but the original photo, there's even more spaciousness. Because I love the spaciousness of the sky, because the moment you take that in, you become aware of spaciousness in you. The moment you look at the spaciousness of the sky, you're not thinking. You're just taking it all in, and then become aware of the presence that's taking it all in. You are that, and this presence, then you feel that more and more strongly in you, the still presence, and that is not a place that needs anything. And there you become, you're at home then, at home with yourself, rather than always trying to get home, because it's the ego state, so to speak. It's, I'm trying to get home, but where's home? You never feel, this is where I belong, this is where, you might think sometimes the physical place is it, but it's not it. Om, Om, Om. It's wonderful that the English word and the Om are so closely related. So the answer is in yourself. The more you live from the deep I, the less you need the other. But that also means the more deeply you can relate to the other, because then you can relate to the other no longer through your neediness, but through your aliveness, through your inner peace, and you can share that with the other. And then the other wants to spend more time with you because it's so lovely to be around somebody who doesn't need anything. And the other then feels so good to be with you. But that's not why you do it. That's not why you go there. But so the thing with this, it's written somewhere. I don't remember where. Well, I do. And the things that you need, all the things that you need, or more accurately, the things that you think you need, many of those things, when you connect with the deep I, will be added unto you. They will be added. Now, what does that mean, added? Added means you no longer need them, and then you get them. You didn't get them when you needed them. This is the irony of the universe. The universe is smiling, or God, and when you don't need, it comes, or He comes. When you need, it stays away, or He stays away. That's the ego says, well, that sucks. And another story, what happened to me is In my 20s, when the ego was growing and growing and growing, and I was becoming more and more unhappy, if I had gone to a psychic and the psychic had said to me, "You will become a great spiritual teacher," the ego would have said, "Wow, this is so great, wonderful, I'll be a great spiritual teacher." It would have been very elated. But if it had been a good psychic, he or she would have added, "But you have to die first. You have to die to the illusory self, and then, yes, it may be satisfying when you're a great spiritual teacher, but you don't even think of yourself as a great spiritual teacher, and you do not regard it as a personal satisfaction. There is something satisfying there, but not a personal, like, I did something." And if the psyche had predicted that, the ego would have said, "I'm not sure if I want it anymore." So the paradox is the adding on. Seek first that, find that, and then the things that you thought you needed will be added on. And it's miraculous how that works. And so that's good. So the whole situation has brought you here. It's all perfectly designed to bring about your awakening.
Thank you.
Thank you. But you can see how people cherish talking about what somebody did or failed to do. And then they talk about it again and again and feel more and more aggrieved. And again, it comes back to the state of connectedness with being. It's only from that state of connectedness with a deeper dimension of who you are. From there, it becomes easier to forgive, because forgive means there was something that was done on the level of form by one life form to you, perhaps another life form. Pain was inflicted, or whatever it may be, whatever the transgression is. And it's only from there that you can see the relative nature of what was done, because you are in touch with a space within you that was never hurt by that. That dimension in you is beyond what can be injured. It's only the form can be injured. The psychological form, somebody might have insulted you deeply. The psychological form of who you are can feel pain, or the physical form of who you are can feel pain. And somebody inflicted that out of unconsciousness. Then recognizing, the first step in forgiving is to recognize that this was an act of unconsciousness, and you do not equate what this person did with who that person is. And it's only from the place of connectedness with being that you can say, no longer hold a grievance about that, because you are in touch with that inside you that is beyond what can be injured. If you're not in touch with that space, then it's hard to forgive. Forgiving means not to harbor grievance or resentment or any negative feeling about it. And really, that's only possible when you are connected with the formless in yourself. As Course in Miracles says, nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. Nothing real can be threatened. This means what is ultimately real cannot be threatened. But what is ultimately real is not the form. It's that which is deeper than the form. That cannot be threatened. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal ultimately exists. It just seems to. Herein lies the peace of God means in the knowing of that lies the peace of God. But it needs to be not conceptual knowing, but a knowing on the level of the depths of your being. And then from there you can look at anything anybody did to you and say it's almost as if it didn't happen. For a while, for example, I harbored grievances against my father for many years because he suffered from enormous amount of bottled up anger, and living with him as a child was like living with a powder keg or an unexploded bomb somewhere in the house. And one knew that at any moment the slightest thing somebody said, and usually it was my mother, the slightest thing somebody said, and this bomb would explode, and the entire house would be filled with destructive energy. And for a sensitive child, and any child is sensitive, young child, it's a terrible thing to live in constant anguish. Any explosion could be happening at any moment, whenever he's in the house. So I had the ambivalent feelings of fearing his return home after work and wanting him to come home, divided. And that was expressed once in a dream that I had as a child. And in the dream I had cut my father up into little pieces and put in a plastic or some kind of sack and hidden under the bed. And after I had done that in the dream, my father arrived home and I greeted him and loved him. And of course, all this resulted, even after when I was an adult already, resulted in quite a bit of grievance towards him, because my childhood was fearful and unpleasant as a result. And it was only when a transformation happened inside me, and there was suddenly that deep inner peace, that I realized he did what he did according to the way in which life had conditioned him. When he was a child, he had an enormous amount of resentment against his family because of, and of course the story can go on many generations. He was the seventh child. His father died when he was 15, and they took him out of the school. They had to pay for school, boarding school. They took him out of boarding school because they said, we can't afford it anymore. But his sisters were still kept in boarding school. And then he had to do menial jobs, and every day his anger was growing and growing and growing. He carried it around the rest of his life. There was not enough consciousness in him to disidentify from the anger. The anger was using him. It lived in him as an energy field, and he could come up any time. He was as much a victim as I was. And I saw that after I had gone through the transformation and found inner peace. I could see that he was a victim of his own circumstances. There was not enough consciousness in him to see what he was doing. And immediately forgiveness happened. I didn't even have to say, I have to try to forgive. He never did. It was as if he had never done anything to me, because basically he hadn't. He wasn't even there. There was only the unconsciousness in him acting up. And then, as he grew older, some of that anger dissipated, remnants of it remained. He also came into touch with some spiritual teachings, especially the power of now, and that helped to some extent. And so his ego grew less, didn't quite disappear, but it grew less. When I was a child, his ego was gigantic, and it was continuously fueled by anger. And an angry ego is something, it's the Incredible Hulk. So the forgiveness happened naturally, and very often you see that when an injury happens, very often there's a mental judgment of a situation, and actually beyond that mental judgment, not that much happened. Let's take a simple example. You arrange to meet somebody, or somebody, he says, I'm going to help you with your moving, I'm going to help you move house, I'll be there at 5 o'clock to help you move with my car, and he doesn't turn up. And that just is as it is. Now your mind then comes in and says, he let me down, he betrayed me, or he was, whatever the judgment of the mind is, and it is very often the judgment of the situation that creates the emotion that feels injured. If you can just be with, he said he would come, but he didn't turn up, that's the fact. Whatever your mind wants to add to it gives you the sense of injury and strengthens the ego. So if you can just be with the pure facts, this is why all that stuff when people talking about other people, what they failed to do or what they did, what he did to me, he betrayed me. Well, what did he do? Well, he went off with another woman or man. He betrayed me. Betrayed me is an interpretation, and the more you have that thought that he betrayed me, the more you feel the emotion that goes with that thought. And you feel, and who is it that feels that emotion? The egoic self feels betrayed, because who you deeply are, who you are in your essence, doesn't feel betrayed. The fact is, he went off with another woman. That's what he did. Is that all? Yeah, that's what he did. If you refrain from adding a story to it, then you don't experience this comes easy when you are connected with who you truly are, then it is easy to let go of the unnecessary imposition of stories upon events. The event is neutral. The story interpretation of it is what creates the anguish. And so if you can just be with what is, but you can see how people cherish talking about what somebody did or failed to do. And then they talk about it again and again and feel more and more aggrieved in who they are. Nothing really happened. He didn't turn up. He didn't return the money that I lent him. I lent him the money, but he hasn't paid it back yet. That's the fact of it. He is dishonest. Well, you don't need that. He did something to me. He defrauded me. Mr. Madoff did it. A deeply unconscious person. I wonder what he's doing now. He's sitting in his prison cell, and many, many people have not forgiven him. Interesting position to be in, to have aggrieved so many people and created so much anguish and suffering in humans. But for every single one of them, beyond their financial loss, they have their own lesson to learn. He has his lesson to learn, and life has given you, if you lost money with Mr. Madoff or whoever else, yes, you lost that money, but there is a deeper lesson you can learn in any loss. Any loss is of course, one lesson is, of course, don't invest with him again. That's understood. Or anybody else like that. That's understood. That's easy to know. But beyond that, there's a deeper lesson to learn, and that is any lesson that comes with any kind of loss. Any kind of loss is a potential opening into the formless, because what you lose is something on the level of form. Whether it's money or reputation or some possession or even an ability to do something, and suddenly you can't do it anymore. Any kind of loss is a loss on the level of form.
I want to speak about like loneliness and pain body, because since 2 years I'm traveling alone, trying to do like you, like doing nothing. Trying.
That's a good try, yeah.
And then I have difficulty to accept this nothingness, and so then I spend time on devices, on Facebook, and then the pain body arrive, and then sometimes I see the world like if it doesn't exist, and that other people are like robots. So it's a lot of suffering, and I don't know how to overcome this kind of feeling.
So you've been traveling for a couple of years?
Yeah, like 1 year and a half. I start with India. And then I'm following you because I went to Norway, New York, Costa Rica.
Okay. And you're not running out of money yet?
The universe gives me what I need.
Okay, that's good. That's a good sign.
But it's about like the disconnection with the world when I am alone and with devices.
Yes, you're not in a relationship at present, and you haven't been for the past 2 years. And the relationship has not arisen, or do you on purpose avoid entering relationship? Okay. Well, whatever it is, learning to be with yourself, at ease with yourself, loneliness can be a great thing when it comes transformed through acceptance into solitude. Solitude only arises when you accept your aloneness, become completely present, and suddenly you sense your own presence, which does not need anything, is already complete, which is not to say that at the level of your form there may not be a need for some company, whether it's physical or emotional or mental or all together. On the level of form, you will continue to experience certain pulls and certain needs. On the level of form, if you have no relationship, you may feel that sense of needing something to complete you on the level of form to some extent. That's not a problem if you are rooted in your essence. You can be aware that on the level of form there are certain needs, and these needs may be met at some point, or right now they may not be met, and that no longer matters that much. It is only of relative importance whether you have a relationship or you don't have a relationship. On the deepest level, you don't need it. On a slightly up on a form level, you're not complete. There's masculine, there's the polarities of yin and yang, not necessarily always related to the biological masculine, feminine, but you are either, if you are yin, you need some yang, if you are more yang, you need some yin. And that operates on the level of opposites and of form. It may be advisable for you to engage in some kind of activity so that you can not only practice presence by doing nothing, because it was never my decision when it happened to me. It was not my decision to do nothing for a couple of years or so. By the way, I'm still good at doing nothing, but it wasn't my decision to do nothing in order to achieve some state. The doing nothing arose because already I was so deeply immersed in presence that I had lost the balance as a human being. I had lost the balance between human and being. Because I love that word human being. The English language doesn't have a word for man and woman, like German has Mensch, which is the word for human being. But in English you have to use two words. But there's the human part of you, that's the form. There's the being you of you, that's the essence. Ultimately, everybody needs to be in some kind of balance between those two. I was immersed in being so deeply that I lost the balance. I wasn't unhappy about that at all, but I lost the balance between the human. The human became so unimportant to me that I didn't do anything to even, I knew, what am I supposed to do with my life? Even that didn't arise, that thought. It was so delicious, delightful to be immersed in being, and that's how this period of complete, not complete, there was some activity because I had to occasionally get little jobs to survive, and occasionally people gave me money, but I did have temporary jobs to survive, so that I was forced occasionally to come out a little bit out of the being, but I didn't last in any job for very long. The moment I had enough money, I would stop again. So I got temporary jobs at various places. For 2 weeks I worked at the Kennel Club in London, filling out forms of puppies that had just been born of different dogs. Fortunately, they had no computers at that time yet, because that would have been beyond me. So there was just that the bliss of being was so all-consuming that the balance between the human and the being was lost, and then it only began to re-establish itself when people started coming to me and asking me questions, and the question pulled me out of the being because an answer was required, but the answer came from the being. So when I started answering questions, suddenly there was a flow, and the answering of questions became my doing. So that's how the balance got re-established slowly. I would not necessarily seek inactivity as a way of achieving some kind of presence. It is sometimes easier to engage in some activity and even engage in relationships and see if you can stay present there. But it all comes back to really the present moment, whatever it is, wherever you are, is there enough intensity in you not to be drawn into mind for long periods of time? Is there enough intensity in you to stay present in that state of aloneness so that you can be the consciousness rather than the person. You are the consciousness. And it could be a great opportunity that you're able to do that, to just travel and explore. But you already went to India, and so you did not find what you were seeking, perhaps. And then you came to Eckhart, and there you did not find what you were seeking, perhaps. And the only place where you can find what you're seeking is within you, in the present moment. Doesn't matter where you are. So, intensity of presence is important to cut through mind. Are you motivated enough to have that intensity of presence? And it could well be that there's not enough suffering in your life to provide the motivation. So that is a possibility, but that's not a problem, because it'll come. My sense is that right now it's just too easy for you. It's too easy. So the suffering is, I mentioned before, the best motivation for liberation is the desire to escape from suffering, or realizing the possibility that it's possible to be free of suffering. And that's why the Buddha chose that term to describe his teaching, which is very, very wise. What's my teaching about? The Buddha said, I'll tell you what it is about. It's not about enlightenment, it's not about achieving God realization, it's not about that. It's the end of suffering. So it seems that he attracted mostly people who were at that stage where that meant something to them. I don't know if you are at that stage where the end of suffering means enough to you to provide the intensity for awakening. I was suffering, that was the motivation. I didn't even have a name for awakening. The wonderful news, though, is life always gives you what you need. And it could well be that if you continue your life in this way, the way in which you live will create more and more suffering. Perhaps the loneliness will become unbearable. And so then the suffering of the loneliness might drive you into a relationship. And then something may go wrong in the relationship, and then the relationship will become unbearable. And then you will seek out another situation, and something will go wrong there. And then that will become unbearable. And then suddenly you will want to be free of suffering. And there you have the motivation. So whether you carry on the way you are now, fine. Life will give you what you need. Or if you think, okay, I'll try a relationship, great too. You will find the necessary suffering to get you there. Thank you.
For many years now, I've kind of been dealing off and on with certain degrees of depression. Sometimes more intense, sometimes less intense. Actually, lately, a lot less intense in large part due to discovering you and kind of reading your works and stuff, which has been super helpful. So thanks for that. But one aspect of this is that my ability to feel things has I feel greatly kind of diminished over time. Things that I used to be excited about don't excite me anymore. I don't look forward to things when I kind of hang out with my friends and things like that, which is stuff that I enjoy. The joy kind of goes away very quickly, but what doesn't go away and what I can feel is the kind of negatives in my life, the sadness and the suffering and stuff. And it got to a point where I started to crave it in a certain degree, because feeling those type of emotions almost kind of reminded me of my ability to feel at all and sort of reminded me of my humanness. So I guess my question is, how do you eliminate suffering when suffering in a certain way is all that you have left?
Right. What about your practice of giving attention to the present moment? Now, if you give attention to the present moment, you become aware of whatever it is that you feel within. And then you need to be aware within and without. That's part of the present moment. So that your attention is not completely absorbed by whatever it is that you feel, because there's also the vastness of the outside world. And so presence, to be present means to be present within and without. You're in both worlds. So you acknowledge whatever it is you feel inside you at this moment. Be also very vigilant to see whether there are any associated thoughts with that feeling. Are there certain thoughts that go through your head that reflect what it is that you feel? For example, if you feel depressed, do you have thoughts that are telling you that life is, after all, not worth living, or whatever the thoughts are saying, that people suck, life sucks, I suck, we all suck, I don't want to be here. That kind of thought. So you need to observe, be aware as far as the inside is concerned, be aware both on the level of the emotions and feelings and on the level of mind activity. What kind of thoughts, and so it requires vigilance so that you don't indulge without knowing it in unconscious thinking. And you can't separate the unconscious thinking and the feelings. So only you can know. I don't even know whether you can answer this question now, because you have to find out in the moment of it happening what kind of mind activity accompanies those unpleasant feelings, and to see whether this mind activity actually feeds the unpleasantness that you feel or the suffering that you feel. That's a very important thing. What role does your mind play in all this? Very important. Is your mind feeding it? Because this is, you have a big pain body there, which is not in itself a bad thing, because a pain body becomes a strong motivating force for you to awaken. I also had a very heavy pain body. That's why I had to awaken. Couldn't stand it anymore. And you're at this point too. Can't stand it anymore. That's good. So be very careful so that you examine your thinking. Am I feeding the feeling? And if you are, that means there's enough awareness for you to realize it. Then you let go of the thoughts. And one way you can do it by, you remember I just mentioned, be present within and without. You can use, for example, your sense perceptions, directing attention to your sense perceptions. That takes attention away from thinking. And then you experience, the next step would be, you still feel the unpleasantness, but you're also observing sensory perception around you. There's the sky, there's the flower, my hand, the hand. And you don't have to, I'm labeling it now, but you don't have to label it. It's better not to label it, just to perceive it fully. Come to your senses, look around, there's an entire world there, and your suffering ends here, where your skin is. The suffering that you experience is inside you, just one step next to you. There's no suffering. Isn't that strange? So the table isn't suffering. I'm suffering, and this inch on the chair here is not suffering. It's just inside this bag of skin. I am the suffering entity. That's me. And then, if you don't know that, then you identify with that feeling, and then you look at this. Then you call, and you still have the conditioned thinking that reflects the suffering, and say, "Oh, it's all pointless. The trees are pointless. The sky is pointless. What's the point of it all? I don't see any beauty in this." And this flower is going to die soon, of course. Everything dies soon, so what's the point in even living? And there's a dog. He doesn't look that healthy. Whatever it is, then you would be just look at the world around you through the feelings. So to be present, you have to not label and just look and take in auditory, visual perception, breathing. So, and then if you give more attention to your surroundings, especially when you're in nature, but nature is everywhere. Even if you're in the middle of Seattle, there's the sky. Well, it's usually at this time of year it'll be gray, but that's fine too. There's sunlight filtering through the sky, and you have lots of trees.
Lots of trees.
The evergreen state, Washington, as it says on your license plate. So that's good. You have that. And that takes your attention away from, you're not denying what you feel, but you're adding a dimension to it, the external dimension. And then nature has a very healing effect if you truly give attention to nature, and you're no longer fueling the suffering that you feel inside you. Of course, it doesn't go away immediately, or a miracle could happen, and it does, but usually not. It's just the beginning of it gradually dissolving or becoming transmuted. Now, looking back retrospectively, if you even know the answer to this, what kind of mind activity accompanies the suffering that you feel in your body? What are the typical thoughts that go with that?
I guess it kind of depends on the situation. Obviously, it comes in kind of phases, but a lot of it is just kind of generalized self-loathing, I guess. I don't know if that's the right term, but
watch out for this. What kind of thoughts? It might even be helpful to write them down if they're repetitive thoughts. See what kind of repetitive thoughts you can catch, because they can obscure your awareness so quickly, right? Especially old thoughts that come again and again and again. They become part of your fictitious identity of the self, the egoic self. So you carry with you then the burden of an unhappy self. I remember that. I had that too. Carrying the burden of an unhappy self. That is... and that is what motivates you to awaken. but there's already been a diminishment of your depression.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that's a good sign. That means presence is arising, and it is gradually dissolving this pain body in you. But your work is not to renew the pain body through unconscious thinking. So you need to be really alert and watch your mind so that you don't create more suffering by unconscious mind activity. And if you no longer feed the pain body, because now the pain body of course also feeds through drama in relationships. It has the two ways of feeding. In your case, perhaps more through your mind, but I don't know, could be also enacting and reenacting drama, emotional drama in relationships with your partner, family members, or whoever it may be, usually people you're close to or work with, but the closer the better. The intimate partners are the best ways for the pain body to renew itself through. So don't add to the pain body. It wants to feed, it wants your unconsciousness, but don't give it to the pain body. You're not feeding it with your mind anymore, and you're not feeding it by being drawn into insane drama in relationships. So you're watching it. There it is. It may not be pleasant, but it's not that bad. Your presence is infinitely more powerful, and it doesn't even fight the pain body. It just, by shining the light of awareness on it, it gradually dissipates. Or a better way of putting it, it gets transmuted, because the energy is not lost. There is enormous life energy in it, but it's trapped. It's trapped energy, so it's felt as negative. When that's freed, it becomes part of presence. It is fuel for presence. The pain body is fuel for presence. That's amazing. So you have plenty of fuel for presence. That's the good news.